Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I want to talk more about Nidhoggr. I know I did the video recently talking about this proposal and changing cards after the fact. I talked about fixing broken cards, and that video link is in the description if you want to see that one. But today I saw a comment from my members only live, and they were asking about my more detailed opinions on this topic, especially now that it's been, some of the voting is underway, to see that this would be passed and that Nidhoggr would be perhaps buffed. It's starting to look like that's going to pass, and I still feel strongly that this is a no. And I do want to unpack some of that more here today, but also I'm going to engage with my audience while doing so and read several comments on this one topic. Originally, this video was supposed to be a frequently asked questions, so you'll hear me talk about how I'm going to answer a variety of questions, but really we are going to dial in on this one topic, Nidhoggr, its broken nature, and whether or not it's okay to fix cards after the fact within Splinterlands. Let's talk about it. If that sounds interesting, stick around. Otherwise, check out the next video. Have an amazing day, guys. God bless. Bye for now. Fixing broken cards. That's what I called it. Let's discuss fixing Nidhoggr. And it was a pretty well viewed video. Thank you guys for checking that video. And in that video, I articulated several things. I'm going to try and really 30-second summarize. First, the problem. People have concerns around Nidhoggr. It was a legendary airdrop within Rebellion. It was maybe particularly underwhelming. And that's what a lot of people think, especially at the higher levels within Splinterlands. This is Nidhoggr. It has speed and execute. It has blast and death blow. It has force reduction, which limits the number of monsters you can put onto the battlefield, which is a pretty significant debilitation. I would argue it's still functional in some contexts, but it is clearly not as good as, for instance, Tofu or some of the other legendaries from the airdrop, from Rebellion airdrop. And with that in mind, the conversation comes forward where people think we should buff it. We should buff it because it's just not competitive in terms of Tofu or Lorcus or maybe even Drath. And I push back and say, look, maybe it isn't as good as some of the others, but there's always winners and losers with every new issuance of summoners. And I think we need to be really careful about when we retroactively tweak the abilities of any one card. Having said all that, I could see that the proposal provided by the People's Guild is pretty moderate. Like, if we were going to tweak it, I would argue that this realignment is not ludicrous. Going from 10 mana to 7 would be a huge reduction, and that would be a buff. But then removing debilitation, the force reduction debilitation would be another significant buff. The bigger of the two buffs is the mana change. And finally, the tactics change would reduce the total monsters that can receive the +2 speed and execute, which is a nerf. And so I think it's a balanced reconsideration or realignment of what Nidhoggr is. But my point would be that we need to be really careful about revising cards that are issued. And if the main point here is that we want to realign expectations for airdrop cards and establish better gameplay mechanics to improve the overall experience, we want to restore fairness to the community in the sense that we want people to believe that airdrops are going to be the highest quality, highest caliber cards in the game, because we want them to feel safe in going in big and investing in Splinterlands card assets. That feels like that's the underlying argument. And I would say, if that's the basis for redirecting change, we need to understand that changing any card would undermine that goal. The goal is to restore faith in the reliability and certainty that the card assets are going to be worth owning. I would hate to know that any cards could just be changed willy-nilly within Splinterlands, that the stats on cards that I purchase could be modified after the fact. I would really rather prefer a confidence that once I know what the stats what the stats are on official release, that I can rely that they're going to stay the same. I can count on that. I'm not going to spend hundreds of dollars on a card and then find it gets nerfed after I bought it. And while it might be cool to spend hundreds of dollars on a card and then have it be buffed, because then you're going to see price appreciation on your asset probably, that would be cool. I just don't think that's wise. I think that is, if we're concerned about power creep, I think retroactively improving the old assets is a more slippery slope toward power creep. But even more than any of those other issues, and there are many issues on a topic like this, I really want to say it one last time. I can't get behind changing old card assets in order to restore confidence that the airdrops are going to be meaningful, because changing their stats is a way to undermine my confidence in the reliability of their stats, right? I can't be confident or certain that the stats are going to be what they are if you go ahead and change them after the fact. And that becomes more common than not. So in my mind, if this was a one-off and we were never to do it again, that would make it a bit easier to swallow. But I don't think this will be a one-off. I think if we say yes to this, ultimately we'll be asking the team to do this more and more often. And there'll be large audiences who are super grumpy about buying certain packs and then not getting, the best new legendary summoner or the new broken. They don't want overpowered cards. They don't want power creep until it's their pack that they bought 10,000 copies of. And then they want all the overpower and all the brokenness. And I just feel like that's not me throwing mud at People's Guild. I love those guys. I'm just saying, I don't like the idea of changing assets. I don't think that instills greater confidence. I don't think that would renew sort of trust in the community around what the airdrop cards are. I think it ultimately would undermine that. And so I would say no to that. That's where I'm at on that one, Paul. And anybody else who was asking, I think it was a comment from Paul earlier. Yeah, Paul Taylor. What do you think about the current prop for changing stats on cards? I say no. Paul did throw a follow-up saying, keep in mind that this was a summoner that the most packs purchased. I do have that consideration in the back of my mind, Paul, when I answered the comment. I should have spoke to that, and I'm going to say now. I understand. The people who acquired the Dragon Legendary Summoner were the ones, that's the most coveted position. And we previously saw with Kitty that was the one that was the most powerful. And then we also look at, you want another confounding factor, because this is not cut and dry. I'm not saying there's only one right answer, and if you don't agree with me, you're just out to lunch. I'm sharing my opinions, but I will admit this is a complicated topic. And like I said earlier, I respect the People's Guild, and I also think their suggestion for reworking the Nidhoggr is not unheard of or not unreasonable. 7 mana is what the other ones cost. Force reduction is a significant debuff or debilitation. So changing those things makes some sense in terms of if we're going to rework it. And as you say, this was the one where people threw the most money at it, and we want them to be honored, right? Or do we not want people to be throwing big money at the legendary airdrop summoners? I think we do. And so I get that, but at the same time, I just don't, maybe it was a missed play, but at the same time, every new series of summoners, there's always a dud. There's always some bests. And just because Kitty was the best last time doesn't mean the dragon needs to be the best this time. And also we saw with Kitty, there was ways to work down its power creep by introducing other true strikes and other swiftnesses and other slows, all of which slowly kind of augmented or maybe removed some of the necessity of a Kitty. It's still amazing. There's ways to improve Nidhoggr without tweaking Nidhoggr stats. I said in a video, and this will be the last thing I'm going to say on this because I already did a full video on this, but you could introduce a monster that's dragon that opposes force reduction, that restores that extra spot, or that is particularly low mana. Like you say you want 3 mana back, you feel Nidhoggr's 3 mana too expensive to play with. Force reduction could allow a force reduction monster to fit on an unfillable spot, like a Rooney type specialty card that goes into a spot that is otherwise force reduced. And so then you get one new legend card, which we might see out of the voucher shop in the future, right? Because those voucher cards are going to be special too. Think of that. So I'm saying there's ways to get to a place where Nidhoggr is more well-rounded if in fact we accept that it's total garbage. And I don't accept it's total garbage. I just think it's not as good. And if it's not as good, some of them has to be worse. And if we want to have if we want to really go deep on this, which is not, I didn't mention this in a previous video. Why don't we talk more about how Tofu got Mylor buff, at the 11th hour, right? The issue to me is people are saying Nidhoggr is not as good as Tofu, but man, Tofu got the Mylor buff at the 11th hour, right? I don't remember the exact timing of that. And again, trying to be respectful of the team too, because they put in a lot of work to build this stuff out. But I'm saying, I don't think the issue is Nidhoggr is underpowerful. Because so is Elias Pruitt. I think the issue is Tofu is crazy powerful. And then everyone by comparison says, wow, like, you know what I mean? I think that's what's moved the window in a sense. This could help more CA packs. Yeah, I think you're right. Conclave Arcana will move greater if the legendary summoner gets buffed. I think you're right. But I would also argue, I don't know that we need to behave in a way that forces, like, I thought we were about trying to not move packs for like, do we want natural growth in in card sales, or do we want to artificially improve card sales? Think about that. It'll be much tougher for a debuff to pass. This is a buff. Yeah, I agree. You're right. But I would argue that there's debuffs and buffs that can happen that are incidental or tertiary from the card itself. Monsters that come along that change how the game works. More Reflection Shield would make Tofu less effective. And that's why I think Fizbo is in some sense a part of that picture. Great conversation though. Yeah. This is a bit sad. This is a bit of a sad note to leave that conversation on, but let's leave it there, Paul. The team agrees they botched Tofu. I think everybody says Tofu. I mean, it's a 75% win rate. It's ludicrous. Like, it's ludicrous. And so Fizbo, I bet, is a piece of how the team is attempting to respond to that. Like that shareable Reflection Shield. I wouldn't be surprised if in Conclave Arcana, especially if we keep raising a stink about this issue on these legendary summoners, they will start to lean toward nerfing Tofu through monster card releases. Or they will introduce other summoners that offer some of the things that Tofu does that make Tofu less necessary. And people will be bitter about that too, because they bet on Tofu, they bought Tofu, they relied, right? So there's always a winner and there's always a loser when we change anything, but the meta is always evolving. And that's why I think when things are done, we leave them and we move on to try to change the next thing to make it better. That's where I leave the conversation. And I'm going to grab 2 other comments from 2 other videos, but I'm happy I will review the comment section from this live, afterwards, and we'll see if there's anything else that we want to grab too. So let's go there. Okay, so I don't know about the changes. Let's see. Tails jumped in on that video. He said Nidhoggr today, EMP tomorrow. Next week might as well go back and adjust Liar. I'm inclined to agree with that. Like, where do we stop that? Where do we end that conversation? And are you bitter if, like, let's say you're a person who isn't in on this conversation with the Rebellion cards and the Rebellion airdrops, but then, you see that happen and some other card, like, you just like, well, my card, like he says, will I Deep Swimmer, like, kind of underwhelming. Why not? Why didn't that one get a buff? I don't know. And then maybe it's different because it's blue versus dragon, but again, I don't think we can believe that dragon is always the best. Looks like a lot of people are saying no. Okay. Let's see. Eleanor, this is such an annoying comment. Let's go ahead and delete. I don't know what the advantage to this would be. Okay. Hey, NFL guys. Same video. A lot of conversation. You know what? We're going to make this video all about fixing broken cards because there's a ton of conversation in the comment section, and I'm sure the people live here are not done talking either. So let's shout out NFL guides who I haven't seen, in a minute. and it's good to see him dropping comments. He says on this topic, they advertise that a card is an NFT. NFT should not be changeable at all. Otherwise, you really didn't buy an NFT. I mean, I'm inclined to agree. Why do you think NFTs shouldn't change? Just my understanding of an NFT image. And if you compare Magic the Gathering, once a card is printed, they don't come to your house and scratch something off the cards and pen in something new. And then he says, and then Perry responded, that is the benefit of a digital card game, though. Cards can be adjusted at will, but they shouldn't. If cards are adjusted really, let's say, haphazardly or if we get too used to changing card stats after they've already been released, that's going to be such a can of worms. We think it's already difficult to deal with community sentiment sometimes around here. If everybody under the sun can complain about how their favorite card isn't strong enough or some other card is too good, I mean, I think we just need to take our lumps and just be like, this is the way Rebellion worked out. And maybe the team needs to slap some wrists in terms of how things were designed. That maybe, like, I think that is a takeaway that maybe we would want to have, because I would be okay with that. Like, here's what I'm saying. I think we all agree Nidhoggr is not even close to as good as Tofu. That's not even a conversation. That's not a debate. It's just Tofu is the best, and it probably shouldn't be the Tofu that's the best. It should be the Dragon, as I think Paul's saying and everyone else probably feels, for a lot of reasons. It's the highest selling buyer within the pre-buy, etc. It's the Dragon. I think that those lines of thinking make sense to people. And so I think we probably can agree that there was some oversight, not just in how Tofu was designed, but in how Nidhoggr was designed, and how the thoughtfulness of how the progression should have been. And that's probably more than a DAO proposal and maybe some sort of retrospective adjustment. I think more than that, it is a conversation that the team needs to have around these cards can't be so disparate. Like, there can't be such a separation between the quality. One's a 10 out of 10 and one's a 4 out of 10. These are legendary airdrops, and people paid money to get to earn that IP. So I think I agree with NFL guys that they shouldn't be changed retroactively. I will kind of agree with Perry and say that they have been changed in the past, and it is one of the benefits of how blockchain can work. And finally, one more thought on that. In other collectible card games, like for instance, Lord of the Rings Living Card Game, and I think Magic the Gathering, you see reprints of cards that were excellent, and they will have slightly changed, altered. We call it errata. The card can be errated. So Lord of the Rings Living Card Game errata card. I wish I knew how to find one right away. I don't, but they can be changed retroactively. And at some point, someone says that's broken. This card does that massive ability that changes the game, and that's too much. It needs to be once per game. And the language can be changed, and it will be changed on future print copies of it. That happens in collectible card games, and so I don't know why it couldn't happen sometimes in something like Splinterlands. But my point is not that it shouldn't ever happen, but that it should be really rare to happen. Let's try and see one or two more good comments. Looks like My Financial Journey's got a decent comment here. And then my throat started, and I see KGM Jam. Oof. Okay, I got 4 more I'm going to read on this topic. My Financial Journey says, this proposal reeks to me. It sounds a lot like YGG's is saying, we spent a ton of money to be first place. First should have the most overpowered card, when in reality, winning first in the pre-sale doesn't ever guarantee a card's strength and utility. I think that is, there's nothing that is, like, this is a fact, what my Financial Journey is saying. I know we want to say it should be a strong card, but we have to admit, there's something in writing that says it's going to be the best of the summoners. It guarantees that you are involved in the process of creating it, going for a leaderboard position in any aspect of the game, and is a wild card play. Yes, at best. Cards shouldn't be altered after the fact, after the release period. Decisions have to be made by many people with regards to their decks already. Yeah, that's the thing too. We've made decisions around maybe selling Nidhoggrs because it wasn't the strongest, and now it's suddenly going to get buffed, and they're going to have to pay twice the price to buy them back. People make choices at every decision and every release. We just have to run with it, I think. KGM Jam says we should immediately pass a proposal to make it illegal to change any card once it's been printed. I like that better than any of these other proposals. I can give you a dozen cards more right now that would be benefit me if they change. Please do not open this can of worms. I think he's right, man. I think he's right. Like and Tails said it earlier, where do we draw this line? But I think this is the problem. You think you're going to help people. You're going to restore confidence. You're going to piss off so many people if you buff some card that they don't have. And maybe that they did have when it was released and they saw, oh, I don't want that. It's not very good. I'm going to sell it. Man, if you buff it, I'm going to be stoked because that's the one gold foil legendary I got out of the airdrop. I would love that thing to get a crazy buff. Just go ahead and blow it up to the moon. But you see my point. I'm calling for no buff. I'm calling for no change because I'm not actually speaking out of a place of like personal benefit. I'm talking out of security, stability, foundation for the game and for the team. I want what they do to be what we expect. And we don't expect them to roll over and change things because we raise our hands. Now we can do that, but man, I would love to see this proposal. Make a proposal that it's illegal to change the cards once they're printed, even if it is broken. Once it's broken and released, again, you'll see another card that comes out and it'll buff or nerf the next set of cards. The meta evolves all the time. Let the meta evolve naturally with the progression of new legends, new summoners, new promos, new Conclave Arcana, and beyond that, even more new cards, all of which will in their own way and in probably to a far greater degree impact the meta than one card, Tofu, or one card, Nidhoggr, right? That's the thing. Okay, and then I wanted to read this comment because I see Necros out there and I want to get Necros point in there too. So Ivan says, well, if you're going to buff mini cards, then let's buff Chaos Legion Legendary Summoners. There are 2 weak, as Matt admitted, compared with the Legendary Summoner set. I think that's probably fair to say in terms of comparison to, for instance, Untamed. But I do think Chaos Legion is very strong, especially when you look at... I'm forgetting its name right now. Red Panda, the dragon summoner. Again, 6 mana, very strong. 65% win rate across a long time. And then Necro jumps in and he says, maybe we need someone new designing the cards in the future. A whole series of dud cards is going to kill the game for a long run. Yeah, this is a sad but serious place to maybe drop the conversation because we are arguing about serious card design concerns. And we have pointed to the team themselves agreeing that some of this was wrong, whether it's with Tofu, whether it's with Nidhoggr, and beyond. And we have seen changes in the game before with certain cards. Very, I think to my extent, to my memory, minor. There was 2 archery cards that lost. There was one archery card, the fire something that lost a redemption. This Fire Spitter used to have redemption. That's one edit that has come to this game. At some point, Tofu didn't have thorns, and then it did. That's another edit, but I don't think that was in release. And then with white, I have some feeling that Jin Renova, the hit points changed at some point because there was a duplicate. Like level 5 was the exact same stats as level 6, I think. So I think level 5 got a nerf, so that level 6 essentially made sense. Like little things like that have happened through the course of Splinterlands history. And I think they should at some points happen maybe. But I also could make an argument, and I think it's a stronger argument, that if you never nerf or buff anything directly ever again, that's probably better for the team and not for the team, for the community's confidence in the cards you're releasing. You could still mess up and you could release an overpowered broken card and you could still mess up and release a total dud. But those can be they're a bit handled better in my mind if we just know that it is what it is, and buy it or sell it however you see fit. But we're not going to go ahead and roll over on you and let you think it's a crap card that you're available to sell for whatever profit possible, and then wow, it's going to get this buff, and then you're going to regret having sold it. That'll piss so many people off, and that's why that's a mistake. And so, yeah, it's a complicated topic, and I don't think, as strongly as I feel, I don't think it's just one answer and you're clueless if you don't get it. I do see the other side as being very reasonable, even the possible buffs that are proposed as reasonable. But I just don't think that's in the best interest of the game or the community or the team. And so for those reasons, I would say no. And I am going to say no, at least for my SPS. And we're right on the cusp of that one. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. My throat's starting to get sore. It's been probably 2-3 weeks since I've been doing this regular. And my throat is already sore. Unless there's another comment. Is there another comment on this before we go? Because I don't want to just go ahead and shut the door. Paul said Chaos Legion had pretty good balance. Rebellion, not so much. I think I mostly agree with that. Mostly. The People's Guild is working to fix these problems by trying to get good groups going to check the Conclave Organic cards. That is a great, I love that. That's the sort of constructive contribution that isn't just, hey, I hate what you did. It's like, how can we help what you're going to do? Matt opened the can of worms by saying, pass a prop to change cards. Yeah. Matt's awesome. Matt's a genius. Matt hurts himself sometimes by answering things like that, right? Because the business answer would have been something like, you know, we do our best to make the cards as equal as possible, and we allow some sort of, you know, some power creep, but we're ultimately trying to make sure that that's reined in and make sure all the splinters are equal, and there's a lot going on and to consider it. There's many voices that vet and review these topics, and we do our best with every single card release, and we will continue to do so in the future. And then you just sidestep the conversation, really. You're not answering the question. You're just saying we're doing our best, and we promise to keep trying our best. And I think that's the real answer that the team is doing and what they're going to try and do, and which that is where we should try and hold their feet. It's like a bit nebulous, but it's not fair to say anyone's going to be perfect at anything. And I do think I really do think Matt is a genius, but I don't think that it makes sense to go at it from that perspective. Okay. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for supporting the channel. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will do this again next week. This probably will be the new time slot because Thursdays or Fridays I have more time. And so, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video today, and have an amazing day. God bless.